Yeah, we are live. It's and I've got 5 minutes, 5 minutes ahead of schedule. So it's 6:55, and I hope you guys are doing well. It is Monday night. Monday. It's supposed to be Sunday, but Monday works too. Tonight we're going to talk about getting the right motor when you go to the wrecking yard. I just put up a video today about upgrading a VORTEC 350, and we did some kind of cool stuff with it. And we did a lot of times. I just do the big basic stuff, which we were talking last night about asking the right question. And so you want to go ask the big question first, and then go ask the smaller questions. And on this buildup, we did a lot of the small stuff. I mean, we had the right cylinder. We had fairly good heads to begin with because we had a VORTEC head. We had put a good camshaft in it. It was a mystery cam. But it had a good, decent intake manifold and carburetor and all that stuff on it. But we got really good power. But we had to take a look at a lot of things. In this case, we were looking to improve the power for a specific class that this motor is running in. And actually, we didn't run it with a 4-barrel. We ran it with a 2-barrel. But we were doing testing with a 4-barrel, so I wanted to show that. But we started looking at other areas because when you want to make power, you get the big stuff, you get the head cam and intake, but then you also look at other stuff. Like we were looking at static compression, which we improved quite a bit. We did a multi-angle valve job because we're limited in what we could do to the cylinder head. We were limited in our porting ability to do that. We also looked at the oiling system, which I like the oiling system stuff because there's some good power to be had from things like windage trays, which is why one of the reasons, and I pointed this out to somebody today when they're making comments about what the difference between a small block Ford and an LS is, or a small block Chevy and an LS. And one of the things I always point to is that, well, it has a factory windage tray, which that helps with power. So anytime you can get rid of windage in the oiling system, it's good. Crank scrapers, all of that stuff. The right kind of oil pan is very important. Kick out pans that stop all of this oil rotation and stuff. And all of that stuff works out very well. So if we start looking at those little things, we start picking up some pretty good power, especially when you start adding that stuff up. So you do a little here and a little there, and things like roller rockers instead of standard rockers. And then we even used when we were adding compression, we milled the head, which is a natural thing. We also looked at other areas for adding compression. So we milled the block or decked the block and brought the piston up to 0 deck because it was down in the hole by about 15 thousandths in this particular case. And then also did a steel shim gasket. So we got rid of the gasket that we normally use, a typical Fel-Pro kind of replacement gasket for a small block Chevy. And you use a steel shim, which they sell. People sell those on the aftermarket. I think Chevrolet might even still offer that because that was a factory head gasket that they used also. Steel shim, very, very thin, so it adds compression as long as you have enough, piston to deck clearance. You have to be careful with that. And so you have to measure that before you make all of that work. But in looking at all of that stuff, we were able to get the power output up quite a bit on our small block Chevy. And we ran a fairly healthy, although exact spec unknown, hydraulic flat tapping cam that was basically a short track camshaft. So it was aggressive ramp rates, and it had a really tight LSA, kind of the way that most people do. We didn't, which people have gone to, we didn't use short travel lifters in it or compress the lifter all the way. We didn't do any of those tricks. We just kind of ran a standard flat tapping camshaft. We made sure to break the motor in, and that all worked out good. So this is not a real high end short track build like some guys do. There's more power to be had there, definitely. But it was kind of cool where we started from and where we went to. And that brings me to my point, and the reason that I posted the thumbnail that I did to get all of this started tonight, and that is to make sure that we get the right motor to begin with, because all of this stuff we were starting with the wrong motor. In the case of the class that this motor was going to race in, the short track class, we couldn't use the hydraulic roller cam anyway, which is kind of why we started where we started. But if you're going to the wrecking yard and you're going to pick a motor, like we put VORTEC heads on it, which are probably one of arguably the best production small block Chevy heads available. So if you are limited to that and it's an iron head, then you would definitely want to look at those heads because they're probably one of the best ones. There's a big argument between the Fuelie heads and the VORTEC heads, but I think the VORTEC head probably has, especially if we're running, if you have a lift rule, then probably the VORTEC head is the one that I would go with and lean toward. They work very well. They flow pretty well. You know, they're not like an LS header. They're certainly not like an LS3 head or something like that. But for a small block Chevy head, they work fairly well. But all of this stuff would have been given if this was a situation where we weren't running class rules and you're just building a street motor for your, you want to build a 400 horsepower street small block Chevy, then there's no reason to start with a hydraulic flat tappet short block like we started off with 190 horsepower. I think it was a new crate motor, a GM crate motor, and they make a lot more than that when you put the dual plane intake manifold and a 4-barrel and headers and stuff on them. But they're not really stout because the camshaft that they use on them is really, really mild. It's like 180 or 90 at 50 and 430 or 440 lift. It's really, the camshaft is really, really tiny. So, and they also start out with very low compression because they start out with like a 72 cc chamber head. It's not a good head. So it has low compression, it has a mild camshaft, it has a terrible cylinder head. It has all the things kind of going against it. If you're starting out and you want to get some from the wrecker yard, just get an L31. Just get a VORTEC motor because it has the VORTEC head already. It has a hydraulic roller cam, which you should have anyway. It's going to make more power. And then you have a lot of other choices. The thing that is nice, I'll have to say, about a hydraulic flat tappet cam, if you can get away with them, either the lifter or the cam not going bad when you're trying to break them in and all that stuff, do all of those things that are necessary to get that done. But they're also, a hydraulic flat tappet cam is less expensive. So you're going to make more power with a hydraulic roller, but it costs more money to do it. The thing that I like about the hydraulic roller stuff is that when we run those motors and get them from the wrecking yard, usually the lifters and all that stuff are still in good shape. We just reuse that stuff. We do it on the big blocks, on the VORTEC big blocks, like the 7.4 liter Gen 6 stuff, the 454, and they still are in good shape. I don't know about reusing, and we reuse the lifters, hydraulic roller lifters, when we do cam swaps. I don't normally do that when we do a flat tappet, like a hydraulic flat tappet camshaft. Usually when we put a new camshaft in, we always put new lifters in. Luckily, the hydraulic flat tappet stuff is fairly inexpensive. But if you look at the photo of the thumbnail, that's like some sort of carbureted small block. And the thing that's good about Kevin, thank you very much, always pull engine from cars that were wrecked. Yeah, that's one of our rules, is that you have a fairly good idea that maybe it was still running when it crashed. That's not always the case, but it's a good idea. Let's see, if your engine was in a base model and the higher end cars are generally better maintained. That's probably fairly good advice, that if a guy has a more expensive car, he's more likely to care about that. I think what happens, the older those cars get, though, they start tending, when people then, like the guy that bought them new, that guy takes good care of it. The next guy that buys it from him used, they take less good care of it. Then the subsequent owners after that take less and less care of it. So a guy that buys a high-end car and he's buying it after it's, after it's lost, if it's depreciated itself to death, then it's worth nothing. And then that guy doesn't take care of it at all. So, ideally you'd want to get a crashed one that's still relatively new, that was still in the hands of the original owner. If you could find that kind of stuff, that would be really nice. But that's excellent advice, Kevin. But the Quadrajet, like low performance, because that definitely wasn't like an HO305 or anything special. But the thing that's nice about it, and the reason that I wanted to keep that photo up there, is because we ended up using that motor. You can see it's obviously from the wrecking yard. It has the telltale sign of having seat belts, because that's what we use to pull it. But even that motor, which is, has low compression, it has bad chambers, but all of that stuff you can ultimately make more power out of. And a lot of times, like when I did a video or I did a series of magazine stories, we started out with the lowest performance version of the 350 that I could find. So we used an iron head. It was an 882 head. It was a 72cc chamber. We used a 2-barrel cast iron intake manifold, the 2-barrel quadrajet or 2-barrel 2G. And we used a factory air cleaner, factory exhaust manifolds, all that stuff. The one thing that I did do on that motor that I kind of wish I wouldn't have, but we were eventually going to go up to where we put aluminum heads and some fairly good sized cams stuff in it. So I had to have a piston that had valve reliefs in it that was going to make some power. So we did a flat top. Had I done a dish piston with the 4 eyebrows on it, like the way that a lot of the factory stuff come, it would have been really, it would have been really mild. I think that this thing made 229 horsepower, even with the good pistons in it. But with the 2-barrel and the stock exhaust and the stock camshaft and all of that, I think it made 229 horsepower. Which some of these, if you remember back, depending on what year you got them in, some of these were sub 200 horsepower motors, even as a 350. The 305 is even lower than that, obviously. And then some of the really small V8s that GM made, the 262, 267, 283, although that would have been fairly early. A lot of those motors were made even less power. I think that they had some that were rated down at 130 or 140 horsepower. So not stellar. And so when you go to the wrecking yard and you get one, obviously you don't want to grab that. If you're going to get something and you're going to use it for some sort of swap that you're putting it in or a build or something, just, make sure that you pick the right one. Do a little bit of homework. The nice thing about the internet is you can go online and go, okay, look, what are the different horsepower levels for a small block Chevy or small block Ford or Dodge or whatever it is you're looking for over the years. And you go, okay, you can not only look at that stuff, which is fairly simple, but you can also look up all of the stuff that was wrong with the motors. Like, okay, what problems did this one have? It had leaky head gaskets or bad like plugs for the block or whatever the issue was with that particular motor. Maybe the lifters don't last or they rotate like on the LS if they get old. All of that stuff, you can find out all of that information before you go to the wrecking yard. Grab the one that you want. Then you can go there and select. Hopefully it'll be a situation where the one that you want, like if you decide I'm going to go get an LS and I'm going to get a 5.3 instead of a 4.8 because the 5.3 is definitely going to make more power. I'd like a 6.0. Richard said you might not be able to find that. So if I have my choice, I'm going to get a 5.3 because it's bigger, it's going to make more power. And then you choose between the 8 or 10 or whatever 5.3s that are there. And then maybe you want to choose the Gen 4 version if you can find a Gen 4 version. Maybe it has the good heads on it. Even if it doesn't, maybe it has the good rods and pistons in it. And then you can pick that stuff up. And so you can get all of that information before you go to the wrecking yard to pick the right one. Because if we would have got an L31, some of those motors, like we were starting out at about 270 or 280, I think, with this hybrid combination that I put together. And I've run lots of VORTEC motors that we've gotten from the wrecking yard, because when Chad and I were doing the Wheel of Death thing where we were destroying all these motors, I went through a number of these, probably half a dozen of these motors, and they all, like the best one made just 310 horsepower or something like that, the way that it came from the we didn't run it with a factory fuel injected manifold. We put a dual plane intake and a carburetor and distributor and headers on it. And then a lot of them made 300 or better horsepower. So starting out, they were fairly good to begin with. They're not what an LS is, but for a small block Chevy, it was actually pretty good. You're not likely going to find too many, like you're not going to go find any of the high performance versions and none of the muscle car stuff. You could find tune port stuff there occasionally. You can find some Gen 2 LT stuff, especially. I haven't seen too many of those actually in Camaros or Z28s, that kind of thing. But we do see them in some of the other full-size cars, Buick Roadmasters and Caprices and things like that. But again, you got to make sure, are you getting the little L99 4.3 liter, or are you getting the 350-based LT1 kind of motor? And so again, doing your homework before you go, make sure that you get the right one. So let's see what kind of questions you guys have. I as an update on the 3800, I talked to the guys today from ZZ Performance, just called into their customer service line because obviously they don't know or care who I am that I'm doing this testing, which I'm kind of surprised. I thought that they would want to know. I thought that they'd want to get this data and they'd be interested in somebody testing their stuff. You know, maybe it's not a big deal, but I called them and wanted to find out where the order was because I'm looking to get the stuff going when I go down and do some more testing. I want to do some more testing, obviously, before Christmas. And there was a holdup on my order because they didn't have the, oddly enough, the 3.8-inch pulley, which I wanted to get a standard size pulley that went on their hub so that I could do a back-to-back test between I could show what the Gen 5 blower upgrade was worth compared to the L67 stuff. So I wanted to do that test. That was one of many tests that I wanted to do. But the whole order, the camshaft and all that stuff was being held up by that. And that's like the least important thing of all the things that I bought, the lifters and the camshaft and all these things that I got. So I told them, look, I don't care about that. Just send the other stuff so that I can get it out and get it to the dyno so that I can get this testing done. And then the 3.8-inch pulley, I can do at a later time. That's not a big deal. I could even go to the wrecking yard. In fact, now that I think about it, it's probably less expensive for me just to go to the wrecking yard and get another L32 blower with a stock pulley on it and just run that. But so hopefully that stuff is coming. The intercooler, the air-to-water intercooler that's on loan, thank you very much, is coming. And so I'll get to do a lot of 3.8 testing, and I'm definitely going to run a turbo. I'm also going to run the 5.9 Magnum stuff, a few tests at least with the Magnum while I'm down there. So that will also be good. So let's see what you guys got going on. Let's see some questions. I'll try to not go back too far so we can kind of stay current on our questions. Tyler thinks I look like Bruce Christensen from Pink's, except I know how to ride a Ninja, though. I actually had one of those. Pontiac 400 was 180. Is that the horsepower rating? Admiral, I'm just saying factory block 302s are risky for high power goals. I think if you're going to try to do big power goals with a Ford and you're getting from the wrecking yard, I would lean toward the 351. Maybe not so much because I'm worried about the block splitting. You're just going to make more power. It's like getting a 6-liter instead of a 5.3 if you're going to get an LS. If it's there, you might as well get the bigger one. And if you are going to get a 302 from the wrecking yard, get the Explorer one because it's already going to have good heads on it. Vern, 300 horsepower and a 3,000-pound car on the street can be very fun. I mean, we had I had a lot of 302s that didn't make 300 horsepower, and in a Notch Mustang, they were pretty fun. Vans are good to find in the yard. Yeah, I actually don't see a lot of vans with LSs in the yards that I go to, but maybe they are there. Estate sales are great places to find cheap parts. I don't want 4V stuff. 6 millimeter like an S366. Swap snouts. Yeah, we can swap snouts. I just don't have a bunch of extra the fluid and the sealer and stuff for that. So I'd have to just reuse it. But I can do that. That's originally what I was planning on doing when I was down last time. Which ZZP cam did I get? I'm trying to see. I got it. It's a 220, 230 at 50, whatever that is. is a 5.4 Ford wordy. I think it is. I like the 5.4 4-valve Navigator motors. I think that there's a lot of potential there. We've done 1,000 horsepower stuff with those things a lot. Yeah, Casey, they didn't have it. Mark Sanchez might have one. I can ask him, but usually he doesn't want to sell any of the stuff. Patrick put an LSA blower on 4853 and 60 and see how much power they can put out. You don't need to test that on all of them. You could, I'm sure you could max out an LSA blower. Guys are making quite a bit of power with those when they put small pulleys on them, and then they're upgrading the water flow to the intercooler, and then also porting the blower and stuff. And I think some of the guys are really turning those things up. But again, it's like anything, when you're starting getting to the limit of the blower, you start getting really diminishing returns. So you're better off having a big motor with lots of camshaft in it and lots of head flow and trying to maximize the NA power, and then the blower can do what it does. Because if you're going to do that, you want to make it so that the blower is not running a lot of boost. You want it to run a lot of blower speed, but not a lot of pressure. I'm curious of the Nick cam with its tight lobe separation angle. The other cam I was looking at that the guys from ZZP had was a smaller cam that they were saying was the cam that set all the records that made a lot of power, but I don't know how it can. It's 6 degrees less duration on the intake side, and I don't know how it can make more power than the cam that I picked, but maybe they know more than I do. But it had, that other cam had less duration, but it had more lift. I do remember the crash. Everybody remembers that. And the greatest thing with Rich Christensen, who I met and seemed like a really nice guy. I met him at SEMA before the show even started, when he was first trying to pitch this thing and get it going. And we talked to him for quite a while, my buddy Bernie and I, and seemed like a nice guy. But there's a great like meme or whatever, or GIF of him walking down the track, and then they also show the Bigfoot walking from the I think it's the Patterson video or whatever, and it's really similar, so it's kind of funny. Injector comparisons, there are $1,000 sets and $200 sets for the same flow rating. I think what you see in the difference in injector flow rate is not a difference between the $200 injector and the $1,000 injector. I think consistency among the sets that you're buying is probably going to be better. You may see also a different injector spray pattern, but we've tried different spray patterns, not different price injectors, but different spray patterns, like a 20-degree cone, or what I call a pencil injector that's just shooting straight out. And we haven't seen big changes in power with those. Vern, you like the video on the 5-liter? I still have a 5-liter, so I'm kind of partial to those. Yes, a 78 Pontiac. Yes, in 78 it wouldn't have been rated at very much power. Joe, I've built a lot of motors. I don't think Rich has. He was more of a TV guy. Duke, what do you think of regrind cams? I've run regrind cams a lot on applications where they don't offer camshafts for them, and they work. You just have to make sure that on some people that are regrinding factory cams that you don't grind through the hardness and have the cam go away. That's not good, or obviously. Big Chief from Street Outlaws always claims to have a stock block Pontiac or a Pontiac block. I don't know that his is a stock block one, and if it is, it's filled and sleeved and all of that stuff. It's not a production block. It's probably some sort of aftermarket version of a Pontiac block. The GT40P is a better head, not a good one though. It's just better than the E7TE head. Although I saw some of I think I watched one of David Vizard's cylinder head deals, and I've seen some other fairly impressive results from guys porting an E7TE head. Now, I always thought for a long time that you could never get good flow out of that, no matter who you are. But it looks like some guys have been able to make those things flow fairly well. Have you ever built any German engines? I have built a inline 6-cylinder for a 1965 230 SL because I had to rebuild a car that my mom had. And it's just like not surprisingly, I think, because this is the engine that they copied. It's just like the Z engine, the 240, 260, 280 inline 6-cylinder Z engine. The Mercedes engine is an awful lot like that. But it doesn't matter what engine it is. I mean, all engines come apart and go together the same way. You don't have to be a specialist in a inline 6-cylinder BMW engine to know how to take the head off and take the block apart and take the pistons out. It's all just the same kinds of things. Richard, what's your opinion on a Ford 6.2 motor? I don't really have one. I don't think that I've ever even seen one in the flesh. Explorers seem to get the hot small fry setups all the time. They get better 302s. They got aluminum 2Vs. Now they get 2.7 EcoBoost. That's a really hot seller for Ford. My wife had an Explorer for quite a while. I liked it. I thought it was good. And I wish it was the EcoBoost one, but it was before they got that. It was a V6. Rich, a small block Chevy 397001000 block. I don't know block casting numbers, so I don't know what that is. You need to tell me maybe what year it is or something. But I don't know what the limit of a small block Chevy factory block is. A 4-bolt block we've done 1,000 horsepower stuff with, but doing it on the engine dyno and having it last, just because it makes lots of runs on the dyno at that power level, even with a LS motor, I don't think I would go out and run it at 1,000 horsepower in an airplane or even in a boat where you're loading it for a long time, or try to run the Silver State at 1,000 horsepower in it, because that sort of thing where it's at load for a long time, I don't think is the same as short bursts that you're doing even in drag racing. Yeah, almost all the engines are fun as long as they can spin the tires, right? Everyone is pushing Richard to do an 07K Kung Fu 2.5 liter. Russell, I want a 6-liter swap my 351 Windsor 93 short wheelbase E150 camper van. Eventually stroke it. Okay. The 6-liter will be a lot better than the 351 is. It makes a lot more power. When we run a 351 Windsor, like even if we run it with a carbureted intake manifold, it makes more power than the EFI does. And even if it's the hydraulic roller one, the 94, 95 and up that everybody likes, that makes about 260 or 270 horsepower the way that we run it. If you run a 6-liter, it makes 400. So and 400 foot-pounds of torque. So it's essentially better, like, by a lot. I want to see your thoughts on a Nissan VK 5.6 liter. I think that it's a good motor. I'd like to run it. I just wish we had a setup to do that. Justin, I have run the LSX-RT and the LSX-R many, many times and compared them together, and they make the same power. I even ran and I've done that both on the Cathedral port stuff and on the rec port stuff. And I even did a top swap where we took the LSX-R top off and put the LSX-RT top on it when I was doing the rec port versions with the adjustable runners. And so I wanted to see if we changed the plenum volume, if it did anything, and it was nothing. Overbuilt, you're here, but 22 minutes late. That's all good, man. That's a win. I started 5 minutes early, so you're on time. I don't know if that math exactly works, but it's got to be close, right? Casey, does anybody know if it's true that the top bell housing bolt hole is tapped on the blocks with 4-bolt mains on late 5.7 Chevy blocks? I don't know. That's a good, like, a little internet thing. Not Chase. I'm late, but I'm here. Good. Yeah, the Skid Factory stuff is good stuff. So Jack, oh, you're in Minnesota. Is it nice and warm there right now? It's pretty cold. Even California, it's pretty cold here. But like California cold, just meaning I have like long shorts on and not the short, not my summer shorts. JB, thanks for all the research. Back in 2012, I swapped in an 05 3.8 liter L32 from a GTP on my 97 RS Camaro. How did you get away with the rear-facing blower deal? That's what I want to know. Or did you run the supercharged version, or did you run it as a turbo and just put a front-facing throttle body on it? Overbuilt. Richard, I made my mind up. My mom's 280ZX. Okay, good. Gets a VK 5.6 liter. I would like to see it dyno with custom camshafts, regrinds. The guys at Schneider might be able to regrind those cams. Any thoughts? I want to play with one. I want to play with all the motors on the engine dyno. The problem is that sometimes it takes a year just to even get them working, because we have to do a bell housing and wiring harness and all that. And sometimes it's just not something that can be done. Or not something that can be done with any sort of, in any kind of time frame. 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, that's pretty cold. In any motor, whether it's a 5.6 liter Nissan or any of the 1UZ Toyotas or any of those motors, they all will make power. They all want boost. They all can do the things that you do on a motor that has that kind of displacement. If it has good head flow, has good intake manifold. The most important thing with a lot of these motors is, can you get cams for them? If you can get reground aftermarket cams or aftermarket cams that are already ground, that's really the key. Because most of these motors, if they're 300 or 400 horsepower, whatever they are from the factory, and you add boost to them, it's pretty predictable what they're going to do at any given boost level. They're going to do this. They're not going to respond better than other motors. They're going to do exactly what they're supposed to do. But the thing is, can we improve the NA power output? Can we get camshafts in them? Because we all know the factory cams are going to be mild. No matter what it is, the factory cams are definitely going to be mild. So can we put camshafts in them that, instead of being 200 degrees or less duration at 50, and in a truck, they might even be lower than that, depending on if they're a variable cam or not. But can we replace those with cams that are 220 or 230 degrees at 50, so the thing can make power at 6,000 or 7,000 RPM and make another 50 horsepower or whatever? And then we can add boost to that, and then we can add even more power. And that's always the thing with any of these other motors. Oh, so Chief's block is a Butler block. Okay, I didn't think that they were doing it with an old 400 block or a Super Duty block or something. ProCharge Mopar's in the house. Maybe I'll get you one of those rather than a Coyote, and I can get one of those cheap. Which one are you talking about, Admiral? 4.3 liter V6 Mercruiser multi-port injection has 220 horsepower to the prop, maybe 220. The intake manifold is supposed to be really good on those. I'd like to try one of those because they're so much better than the central port injection stuff. I think if you add a camshaft to that motor, you're going to be doing really well. We made on the balance shaft motor with a carburetor and intake on the 4.3 liter V6. I think we can get to 300 NA horsepower with ported heads. Richard, what are your thoughts on heads, cam, intake, ELQ4? You got to tell me what kind of power you want. I mean, there's 20 videos up on 6-liter performance. There's one that gives you 10 different engine combinations, and there's lots of information up there. So you can make whatever power you want. A stock one, the way that we run it, makes about 400, and then you can make you could get near 600, although it takes a lot of effort to get 600 NA, but then, you can run boost, and then the sky's the limit for anything. So whatever you want to do and wherever you want to make power, there's a combination up on the channel for you. I think the record for ported hump heads is 600 horsepower NA. They can make a fuelie head flow 300 CFM or somewhere near there. Bang for the buck, 350 Chevy or 5.3. I think an LS is the way to go. Coben, was it easy to get the Holley EFI to work with crank and cam sensors and MAF? We don't have a mass air flow meter on it. It's speed density, but after somebody told us how to do it, and I'm sorry if I don't know your name, whoever helped us out with that and helped Eric and Ish with getting that working and showed us the magic deal with what we had to do, it worked fine. But there's no mass air meter on it. Yeah, Tim, I just try to be nice when I make comments about that. It seems like a lot. Patrick, my buddy, has a 454 TBI, so that's a Gen 5 out of an 88 square body. Anything you can do to wake it up a little bit? Yeah, you can put a small camshaft in it. If it has the factory ECU, that's kind of limiting. There are throttle body upgrades for it, and injector upgrades, and inserts or spacers between the throttle body, and you can do headers and things, but ultimately the throttle body is going to kind of dictate what the power is. Any budget-friendly 5.4 Navigator intakes out there? I don't think so. Sullivan, I think, is the only one. Although isn't the hang on a second, guys. Okay, I'm back. Put my backdrop back up. Yeah, get my green screen. There you go. There we go. Okay. Where was I? Oh, the blind. Let's see. The 10 block is the high nickel block. So that should be better then, right? I mean, I think it would be better. And a season block, I think, probably would be better too. But I think that the difference between a season block and a non-season block, I don't know how much that actually is. Any piston to valve issues with the stock bottom end 5-liter GT40 1.7 roller rockers? You're not going to want to run the 1.7 rockers with a 274 cam, because you'll run into piston to valve clearance. You just need to run a 1.6 rocker with that. I don't know what is the engine model, because I know this is a traditional throttle, not electronic. The other question is, can I convert the throttle to electronic into a traditional one? If that question is about the 3800 that we ran, we're not running the drive-by-wire throttle body, and we're not running a mass meter on the 3800. We're just opening the throttle mechanically. We just took it apart and welded a rod on there and made it into a mechanical throttle body. And yeah, you can use an adapter and put a, I think some guys are using the, what's the motor that everybody wants me to run? The North Star motor, or you can also put an LS one on there. Especially if you're using a Holly, I would recommend adapting over to an LS throttle body, because then you just use a manual LS throttle body, and then the harness from the the Holly plugs right into the TPS and IAC and all that stuff on that throttle body. Happy to help, Russell. The 07K is the VW double overhead cam 2.5 liter 5-cylinder. It's kung fu because it has the fist of 5 direction. I'm tuning a Ford 2.8 liter V6 from a Sunbeam Alpine. I'm hoping a 4-inch crank can be made to fit. I've never done any work on those. Is that the same motor that was in like a early to mid 70s Capri? Is that the same motor? I've done a little bit of work on those, but only way back, and we were just putting a Holly carburetor and headers and things like that on it. Justin, I have a 305 in my 82 Camaro. Should I bore it out? You're limited in how far you can bore that thing. Should I upgrade to a 350? You'd be money ahead just going to the wrecking yard and getting an L31 VORTEC 350 and making it a carbureted 350. Do you have any testing on the BTR equalizer intake for cathedrals? I don't know which one is the equalizer intake. I've only tested the way early on. I did a test with that manifold, and I don't know if it was even a production piece. It's a real high RPM short runner manifold, and that's what you'd want to use it for. Screaming Z1 just got a C5 with an LQ4. Oh, you have an LQ4 with 243s in your C5. Nice. Looking over your old videos today, and now I'm just overwhelmed. Just tell me how much power you want to make, and I can tell you what camshaft you need to put in there to make that power. The older straight BMW 6-cylinders seem to do well on boost. They do exactly what you'd expect them to do on boost, and they do work well because they make pretty good NA power. Yukon is, it's been -30 in Yukon, Canada. You win. That's really cold. I've only been in that kind of temperature a few times, and it's only been when we were up skiing. And it was the one time in particular I remember was up in Bend, Oregon, and we had a wind chill factor up the top that was in the -30 to 40 range or whatever. I don't remember what the actual temperature was. It wasn't that cold, but it was definitely below 0, but the wind chill factor was the big thing. Can I convert the throttle to 5.3 liter VORTEC electronic throttle body into a traditional one? I don't know how you do that on if you have a VORTEC 5.3 and it's drive-by-wire, and I don't know how you convert that in the wiring harness, but doing it is a simple bolt-on swap because you just put the earlier throttle body like I have on my 02 VORTEC motor, and that's easy, but I don't know about the harness part of it. Admiral Richard, if I sent you a motor expecting you to eventually explode it, would you want a 4654 Coyote or a Ford single overhead cam? A lot of those I can just go get from the wrecking yard. I can go get like any 4.6 or 5.4 is easy to go get at the wrecking yard. I can find lots of those. I see Navigator stuff there all the time. I don't see a lot of, I see Aviator motors there occasionally. I don't see, there's lots of 2-valve stuff. I don't see any Coyotes, and I don't know that I've ever looked for a single overhead cam Ford. I'm not really interested in doing a Ford 6.2. People are much more excited about Coyote stuff. Taylor, LS swapping a 350Z. That's very common. Nice. In your opinion, was good LS for 500 wheel horsepower and a donor car under 5. I don't know about the car that you're using. There's a Z. It seems like a good car. 500 wheel horsepower is going to take boost in most things. It's hard to get that NA. Paul, what's up? Thank you very much. Did you have a question? Saw a really nice 1UZ on an A86. That would be a good combination. Although, is that motor all aluminum? The electric throttle can be tuned to cable. Okay, so if you just put a manual throttle body on there, the ECU can recognize that. Yeah, Taylor, that's good advice. You can find although I don't ever see any of those in the wrecking yard. You might be able to find those, I don't know, online or something. Find an L33 or an LC9 aluminum 5.3. They're pretty rare. For me, they are. Screaming, I also found out that a dormant LS2 intake was basically the same price as a fast. I would definitely go with the fast then. So JB, you ran it with a Gen 5 Eaton blower, had to cut and weld an elbow on the blower, and then mount the throttle body up front. Okay, so you just did an elbow going around. A little hammering on the firewall. Never hurt anybody. Let's see. A real Super Duty Pontiac mill is probably worth more than the aftermarket block. Yeah, they're not cheap. Best 6-liter to get for 1,000 horsepower. They're all the same. You can make that kind of power easily with any 6-liter you get. So get the cheapest one. You can get, I would pick a Gen 4 if I had my choice. I would get an iron one and not an aluminum one, because you can, nobody's going to stop at 1,000 horsepower. If you have a turbo 6-liter and you're making 1,000 horsepower, it's really good. 1,100 and then 12 and then more and more and more. So get an LQ4 or an LQ9, get a Gen 4 with the good rods, put ring gap in it and head studs in the cam and that stuff, and you're on your way. An L78 is fine also. Just about finished with my 429. Fully ported C9 VE heads. Nice. Hoffenhauser turbo thrust intake. Holley 1050 headers. Nice. That should be good. Let me know what it does. What does chat want to see? An older mod motor, a Coyote, a 6.2, or a 6.2 big block modular? Yeah, you guys got to answer Admiral and see which ones. I know what everybody asked for, and that's the Coyote Big Bang is what they would want to see. And that's what I wanted to do. I thought that I had a line on one, and it kind of fell through. I want to put a 3800 in a Chevette, Tyler. That's a good idea. Gen 348, 30 over, ported heads, 218, 224, TBS, 92, Terminator X, Trunnion upgrade. So I think I have 4.8s that would be like that. I don't know about the ported head, but that's going to be low 400s flywheel. Cameron, 91 S10, 3.4 liter, 200 horsepower NA, 36 degrees timing, 300 horsepower boosted. I'm thinking 27 ring gap. That'll be fine. Timing, how much would you take out per pound? 12 degrees total. If it wants 36 degrees total now you're going to be near 20 probably. I can you help settle an argument between you guys? Might be able to answer this. I don't have an answer for it. I don't know. I think it's one of the small questions and not one of the big questions. I think it's esoteric, and I don't know that it needs an answer. But can you settle an argument between me and my brother, which is more fragile, a 4G63 or an SR20? I would say that the SR20 is, but you guys let me know what the other guys in the chat chime in, and if you know about these particular motors and you think that one is stronger than the other or weaker than the other. Oh, Sullivan doesn't make the intake manifolds for the 5-horse anymore. Turbo coupe. Thank you very much. Casey, I want to make 10 horsepower less than it takes to break the Dana 44 in the back of the Scout. Nice. Uh, 1 degree per pound. Well, you could take out less than that in the first couple of pounds, and then maybe more than that as it goes up. I don't know that it's an exact 1-to-1 rate, but like I said, we would be in the 20 degree range probably on something like that. Twin GT45s on the big block Ford, that will work. That's good for 14 or 1500. Jack has an update on the Chevy Sonic Turbo. Nice. Got an OEM 3-bar map sensor, aftermarket aluminum valve cover. Nice. That's going to really add power. Hoping you put it all together. Let me know what happens. I think those are cool cars. Rick, if you had $10,000 spent on a small block Chevy for a 73 Corvette, would you build the motor in it and go torque storm or something blow through carb? Would you a big head cam, dart block? Are you set on doing a small block Chevy? I think that I would put an LS in it. I think that you'll make more power. If you're going to go with a small block Chevy, a Dart SHP short block works really well. The 372 that WestTech has makes really good power. If you want to really spin the tires, then if they have a 427 small block, that will also work. Admiral, I'm sending something to Richard if I can get it for $500 or less. Ready to run. Turbo TBI 5.7. Those are hard to get enough fuel to. I have a 2010 Camaro and I ordered a BTR Stage 4 cam. How much horsepower do you think it can make? Which Stage 4 cam did you get? Did you get a Stage 4 truck cam? Did you get a Stage 4 LS3 cam? A Stage 4 1 LS1 cam? You got to tell me which one you got. You can replace the electronic throttle body with a manual throttle body, but you're going to have to retune the ECU to do that because it's not going to recognize, and you might have to change the wiring harness also to do that, or change something on the wiring harness because the plug-in for the drive-by wire is not going to be the same plug-in for the TPS and the IAC for a manual throttle body. So there's going to have to need to change something in the wiring harness. Anyone from Kingston, Tennessee area in the chat? That's not me. Jesse, Richard, I've been watching for a couple of years now. Nice. Has it been that long? Love your work. Quick question. I just built the 5.3 with 706 heads. I had the machinist install big valves on the intake side and a cam. Is that the question? Best bang for the buck is a Police Caprice 6-liter. They put a 6-liter LS in a Chevy Caprice. What do you think the L8653 for boost? Yeah, you can make 1 million horsepower with that. Can you mix parts Gen 4 into Gen 3 block? Yes, you can. If you're mixing and matching the crankshaft and the rods and the pistons, it's going to have to be rebalanced. I know guys don't do that, but after measuring them, it's different. Total timing for carb Gen 5, Gen 6 big block with L29 heads. I'd have to look that up. I think that they didn't want as much timing as the other stuff. I'm going to jump down to the bottom here. Seems like I've missed a lot of questions. Zoo, I don't know about the ECU stuff. If your 2.2 has a similar PCM to an early LS, but I don't know that it has all the drivers and stuff in there to run an 8-cylinder. What's an easy to find favorite engine? How much are you finding them for in your area? I go to the wrecking yard, so the price on the V8 is all the same. Caprice police patrol vehicle. I thought that they stopped making the Caprices when they had the 5.7 Gen 2 LT1 base motors in them. Ron, I have a stock LQ9, 243 heads, Trailblazer intake. That's good. Headers and stock harness and ECU. In your opinion, can I get 400 flywheel horsepower with a stock cam? The way that we run it, that motor already makes 400 horsepower. If we put that on the engine dyno and ran it with headers and just ran it all stock, an LQ9 will make, it'll actually make a little more than 400 horsepower at the flywheel. Jeremy, I honestly, his question is, hello, Richard. I don't know a 6-liter. Do you know the difference between a VS Racing 7885 Gen 2.5 and the next gen 7875? I'm thinking you meant 7875 Gen 2.5 and then the next gen version. I don't know how much of an upgrade that is. I'd have to get that specific information from Viren to see what the difference is. What is the best spark plug for 5.3 VORTEC? And can I put manifold 6.0 or 6.2 or 6.253? All of the exhaust manifolds for the LS motors all interchange. It just depends on where they come out at and how you want to route your exhaust. So all the stock exhaust manifolds will interchange. And in terms of the best spark plug, you're going to have to pick the plug that's going to work for. We normally pick heat ranges based on what we're going to do with the motor. So a factory heat range would be for a factory stock motor. We normally put a colder heat range plug in. Anything that we put a turbo in is going to get an 8 or a 9, sometimes a 10, depending on how much boost we run. Small block Chevy Dart, Eagle block, Dart iron heads, 427, Fast EFI, 730 horsepower pump gas VORTEC. Going to make more, eventually going in a 72 K20. Our motor mount's a problem. I don't know why a small block in a K20 would be a problem. Uh, 500 horsepower from your Camaro, as long as it's not 500 wheel horsepower, which would be hard to get. 500 flywheel horsepower from an LS3 is just going to be almost any kind of camshaft. The stage 1 or stage 2 kind of thing from BTR, Cam Motion, or Texas Speed, or Comp, or anybody. Take a look at I have videos up on I think that you're talking about a 6.2 liter LS3 base motor. So take a look at all the videos I have up on camshafts that I've run. I've run lots of camshafts on 6.2 liters, but up to and including the biggest kind of cam that you can fit with available piston to valve clearance. That camshaft can be up at 560, 570 horsepower at the flywheel with just a cam change. So you can make a lot of power with those. 32 Nomad. Hey, Richard, OEM LS2 intake or Dorman? There would be a difference between those two. The Dorman LS2. I call it the Dorman LS2 because it has a 90 millimeter throttle opening, but it's much better than the factory LS2 intake manifold. The LS2, when I did the testing, was it was the LS1 is the worst, and then the LS2, and then the LS6, and then the truck, then the LS6, then the Dorman, and then the Fast. And so you'll pick up power if you get the Dorman, but I've heard that they're pretty expensive. And I don't know how the LS4 slots in there. I want to test that, and I have one, but I just haven't run it yet. Best cam for a 5.3 with a 200 shot. There is no camshaft that's best for a 200 shot of nitrous. The best cam, if you want to make the most power, if that's your question, pick the camshaft that makes the most power and then add the nitrous. The nitrous is just going to be a separate thing. So you want a camshaft that makes a lot of power with a 5.3, and then that's the biggest cam that you can put in there that fits with the available piston to valve clearance, and then you add nitrous on top of that. Richard, I just saw a video of a 351 Windsor punched out to 440 inches. That's probably not a stock block, right? 680 wheel horsepower? It seems like a lot. Can you do a 632 big block Chevy power adder? I think the guys at Blueprint have one of those, and probably Westech and the Motor Trend guys might have one of those. Okay, 2 more minutes. I got to get going. I have a 2007 LQ4 with 317 heads. What head swap to gain compression point using a sloppy stage 2 inch and 7/8 headers? You should put the cheapest heads you're going to find are going to be a 706 head, although I probably would put a 243 or a 799 head on there. If you really want to make power, and you're not going to change you won't change the compression, but if you put the LS3 or LY6 rec port heads on there, that will make more power than any factory head. So you have to put an LS3 based intake and cylinder heads on there, and the rockers also. But those heads make way more power than they'll make 20 or 25 more than a 243. Tennessee's in the house. Can I put a Whipple on an NA cam? Yes. Yes, you can. Oscar, do you have any experience with a 451B stroker Mopar? I do not. Screaming, take a look at the video that I have up where we ran that comp 469, 54-469-11 camshaft, and look at something like that. It's going to be 230 something, 231, 23, whatever, and then 240, mid 240s kind of camshaft. That's going to put you at the wheel horsepower that you need. It's going to be something like that. It's going to be something that's near the top of what you can fit for available stock piston to valve clearance. And I don't know if you're going to get 450 with a 243 head. When we put that camshaft in with a cathedral port head like that, it's going to be closer to, it's going to be low 500s flywheel with that. So it's going to be closer to 400 or wheel horsepower than it is going to be to 450. If you want 450, you need a better cylinder head. You need a rec port head. Are you going to O-ring the Cadillac 500? No. I know, Tim. I'm sorry. I think that is probably the case. The Holdner tax on the Dorman intake manifold. After I told people how good they were and they work as good as a Trailblazer SS, then everybody started buying them. Yeah, in Screaming, I have the video up, a comparison between the 799 head and the LY6 rec port head. It's the same as an LS3 or any of the other ones. I have that video up so you can see what that difference is. And then what the difference is between a good set of aftermarket heads, like we use TrickFlow 225s. Those work really well. Ported stock ones, if they're ported properly, also do really well. Not sure if it's a Windsor block. Yeah, it's probably more like a dart block or something if they're going to get that many cubic inches out of them. We've seen 460 inches out of a dart block deal, out of a small block, or a 351 Windsor based motor, and they they can make a lot of power. $1,000 through Summit for a Dorman LS2 manifold. You could just buy it fast for that. Is 706 heads on a 6-liter 430 piston a good idea? Yeah, it'd be better to port those, though. Yeah, I haven't seen too many sheet metal intake manifolds that do as well as a fast, so that's the problem. Do you build engines? I do not. Okay, somebody give me one more question. I gotta get going, yo. The Trailblazer intake is a good one to get. It's just it doesn't fit sometimes for a lot of low hoods, and a lot of people don't like the way that it looks. And I thought that Dorman, one of the people were knocking off those Trailblazer SS intake manifolds too. I thought that there's definitely an aftermarket version of that. Yeah, the low profile thing is definitely necessary. Big J, Fast gave up on their customers and fell too far behind if they don't care about selling intake manifolds anymore. AG1, is the wastegate exhaust necessary? Well, the wastegate exhaust was necessary when I was trying to do the compound stuff, definitely. UPS mix, so they got TBS intake manifolds for $479. Okay, Tim, you get the last question of the night. What was your biggest surprise on the dyno? It had to be the biggest surprise in terms of power. It had to be the first Big Bang motor. But my biggest surprise was we were cranking over a motor, And I think that we were even, I want to say that because we normally, when we run these motors, we before we start them, we put a drill on them. And this was a small block Ford. We put a drill on them, and then we prime the oil pump so that we make sure to get oiled all the rockers and all that stuff, so to make sure that all the lifters and everything is all lubricated. And I think we tried to start this thing up, and it had low oil pressure, and we shut it off. And then I ended up dropping the pan, and one of the main caps was not on. So that was a bit of a surprise. We actually put it back together, and it worked just fine. And others were not tight. So it was somebody forgot. Somebody was in the middle of what they were doing and walked away to go have lunch or go online or whatever they were doing, and then never did that and put the whole thing the rest of the way together without tightening the main cap. So that's an important safety tip. Make sure that you tighten the main caps. Thank you guys all for showing up and participating and helping out. That is always appreciated. And I've got another video going up on, this one's on small block Chevys. Yeah. And the Ford stuff, I think, is up now, right? It's, you just forget about all of them. Thank you guys for showing up. I'll see you all tomorrow.